Good morning. This is Magdi Hanna. I am the chairman and CEO of the International Institute for Software Testing. This webinar is hosted by IIST. We're very pleased to have with us today Paul Grossman, who's been very well known on the internet and social media and LinkedIn. He's been posting a lot of useful stuff. Um, Paul Grossman is our expert in test automation. He has been in the field of test automation for over 20 years now. He has shifted to the use of AI in test automation. We're very glad that Paul found time to be with us this morning. I'll let him tell you about the talk he's going to be sharing with you today. Paul, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magdi. Today we're going to be talking about secrets of dynamic playwright locators without a page object model. I do mention Playwright. This can actually be done in Selenium, but it's a little easier in Playwright. So don't be too frightened if you're a Selenium person. And this is all Playwright over here. A little bit about me. I am a published author. I wrote the Enhanced Test Automation with WebDriver.io with my co-author, Larry Goddard. And if you happen to know Angie Jones in our field, she actually wrote the foreword for that. I was really appreciative that she did that. I have been designing test automation frameworks ever since 2001, working with an X-ray machine at the very beginning. Then worked into... And that was working with Windrunner at the time. And I've gone through and touched just about every automation tool that's out there, including Qtp, Selenium, WebDriver, Playwright, even paid tools out there like Applet Tools Autonomous. The reason that this presentation got created, quick story, was about 7 years ago now. We were working in a UFT project and everything was working fine. We had about 100 test cases that were going. We had our new release, and the only one of the test cases passed. It was the login. Everything else just could not find an element. And we realized that there were more than 100 elements in the object repository for UFT. And it would probably take us about 2 days to go and fix and identify and change them all. The ultimate solution I came up with off the bat was, why don't we just write a couple of lines of code that can go and find an element on the fly? Because we realized what had happened was that all of our link elements, the anchor buttons, had all changed to button elements. And that essentially was all it needed to be fixed. So I wrote a few lines of code. Within 2 hours, we had 94 of the test cases running and passing. That left us with 6 other test cases, 3 of which were just elements that trick just did not work. And then the last 2 were bugs that we found. So we were happy. We showed our ROI, and we were also able to get our automation framework working, even though the developers had completely changed the underlying elements. One other tip here, I've been not only an instructor, but I also was a student with IIST. Those courses were foundations for me on this, and they have been a really strong way for me to show return on investment. I had my courses way back also in 2001 when I first started this, and Dr. Magdi's institute was really influential on me moving forward in my career and getting to where I am today, some 25 years later. Some of the things you'll learn about in this session, we're going to talk about how you can do monkey patches with logging. We're going to do some enhancements with wrappers, understanding how you can have a click method that takes locators, also takes strings so that you don't necessarily have to go to a page object repository to go and get your element. And then passing our objects onto an expect, which might be using the exact same element we just had. And I'll talk a little bit about understanding how AI can be used when we're talking about coding efficiency. The first thing I would like to say is when you're first getting into AI, if you're using Claude or you're using Copilot or whatever tool you happen to use it for documentation. Here's a cool little browser 2 function that is just not doing anything, and it does say that there's some comment there that's to be done. It's going to implement some logic to navigate to the specific URL with a couple extra fancy things. All it really does right now is if you browse to the URL, it just returns false. But is there anything else that this might be able to do? One of the things I like to do is just have my AI go through and kind of give me a little bit more description as to what is supposed to be going on in this application. That's usually when I get started on a project. I am the guy in there on a project that's already been in flight for 2 years, and I don't have the idea of what's going on. One of the most recent projects I worked on, the lead of the automation project that had been in flight for 2 years, I had only 90 minutes to talk with him. So using AI to go and document everything that's in your code is the best trick that I had over here. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges of automation. We're going to talk about the last thing. Essentially, with most tools, you usually have some sort of recorder that'll go out there, capture your objects, capture some data, create yourself a test, and then all you have to do is run the test and report on those results. And that's it. Your day is done. You can go home, catch some sleep, get paid. But then the next thing you realize, 5 minutes later, there's a random event there. 1 day later, I get back in the office. My data is stale. I wrote this test case to verify today's date, but that's now yesterday's date. So now I have to have some data that will be updating dynamically on its own. All right, so we got our framework to take care of that. All we have to do is anticipate a process flow change. There's an extra button on the login that's being added in for the customers for security. All right, so now I have to go and debug my steps, add a little bit more, and now I am done. Nothing more, anything else to deal with, except that one sprint later, our objects change, which is the story I just told you. So today we're going to be working on seeing if we can find a way to reduce the amount of time that we spend maintaining this. Because as automation projects go longer and longer, you're going to get more pages, more page objects models, more elements in there. So we're going to take a look at 2 things. One is to try and recover from a stale element, and 2, see if we can eliminate that page object model entirely. In this session, I'm going to be talking about 2 things. It's monkey patching versus wrappers. Now, if you ask the AI, if you ask anyone out there, when we talk about monkey patching, what that means is we are going to try to take the entire function and completely override it. You could do this in UFT, QTP years ago. And if you're good and clever, you could do it safely. However, I don't really recommend monkey patching for trying to globally replace any of the functionality that's built into your framework, whether it's Selenium or the Playwright. Mostly because you're making changes on a global session and you really don't know what's out there. There's going to be a Bigfoot out there that's going to be a problem. So it's not advised for changing any of these, but I do advise it for logging the file location. So if you run a test, you can find exactly which clicks are being done, and then you can take a look at getting new features and functionalities with a wrapper of whatever you get. I like to put ADV after my function so I can find exactly which wrappers are being clicked on, or which ones have been converted and which ones don't. They take the exact same properties, work the exact same way, except we put a little bit more clever coding inside there. So basically, I will be making a click advanced. We'll also talk a little bit about an expect advanced, because that becomes a issue as we move on. And then this becomes a piecemeal replacement of the click to a click advanced based on what the monkey patch reported back at us. So how do you do that monkey patch? Well, this is it. You can actually go to your AI and say, hey, I need to monkey patch the click, and I want to know when it clicks, I want to log out exactly where did it get called from and what line of code did it get called from. And this is the code it'll actually do. You can ask the AI to create it. It'll create something very similar to this. And once it does this, it'll basically do the exact same click that you asked it for. So you do a click, and now your console log is getting some output saying, by the way, you did a click at line 37 of the login script, which is good because we're going to start there. But we don't do anything more than logging in data to know where we're going. Never try to monkey patch the functionality at this point. A little bit about coding standards, and this is kind of cool. You can actually tell if you're vibe coding like me, and you're actually asking the AI to write the scripts for you. It actually might go out there and add in hard-coded weights at some point. It'll go try to build a test, write it, execute it, and then if there's a timing issue, it will generally actually implement a wait for a timeout in there. I try to get rid of these. This is the first thing I do when I get on a project, is to search for how many wait for timeouts are out there. And then I don't like using that. These are hard-coded waits. It's a problem because it doesn't allow the framework to scale to responses. Like if your developer has put in a select all from names from the database, it might take 45 seconds to return 1 million records, rather than they realizing like, oh, that's slowing everything in it down. We're losing money at from the customers leaving, and then changing it to select top 10 from the names. Well, now it might respond in 45 milliseconds, getting that from your database. Your response time is being dynamic, but your hard-coded weights won't be with that. So what we'll also talk about in the session is how to build a dynamic weight that will be built into our click, and our click will be able to take a straight-up string rather than a page object model. All these are all interconnected. So what we're going to start off with is to create a dynamic wait function, which is included a object count loop and a wait for spinners. Here's an example selecting a ledger. Look at this. Somebody put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 14 seconds into this with these weights that are in there. This thing is going to be as slow as ever. So POM versus POMless. Can we really actually do this without CSS or XPath? Can we find elements on the fly? Can we recover when the POM is stale, the object is stale? And you can do it in Selenium or Playwright. And can the AI help us on this? Well, let me start at the very beginning, which is selectors. You're going to have to be working with some selectors, and these are the selectors you got in Selenium. You might notice that Playwright is kind of eating Selenium's lunch, and this is exactly the reason right here. Selenium is limited to only 8 different ways of finding an element with its by command. And for the most part, the only ones that anyone ever uses is either as an XPath or a CSS selector. You might hear someone say you should always use CSS selector because it's faster. Well, it's faster by milliseconds. You wouldn't be able to really tell the difference between trying to find it by CSS selector. Also, it's it's harder to see what element you're actually trying to go for when you try to go with CSS. And XPath supports text. You can find something like an add to cart button through the text, where in CSS you can't do that. You have to use the name attribute or go find something. Hopefully there's something descriptive in that name. Everything else out here, you can find links, partial links, tag names. That's fine, but it's fairly limiting. And we only know that because when Playwright came around, they came up with a whole bunch of at least 10 different ways of doing this. And and the number one way to do this is to go and get by a role, because it says, hey, I'm looking for a button, I'm looking for a link, I'm looking for a list, and then here's some description of what I should be able to find in that list. This is the primary way you want to do it. It is a change in the design, in the common thinking paths. If you're in from Selenium, you're going to say, oh, I should be doing CSS and selectors and XPath. You can do it, but it's at the bottom of the list. There are other ways to go and do stuff. You can search by the test ID. You can get an element by the text, get by label. get by the placeholder, and you may find something in there that says force equals true. By the way, all of these have built-in auto weights, so you don't have to actually have a lot of weight for stuff, unless you went and put in force true when you were describing this. That disables all the auto weighting that's in there. I believe auto weighting is also degraded if you're looking by a locator. So always do the get bys starting with getByRole on this. Playwright has a lot of other things that you can do, because we could add code that says, hey, look, I wanted to find a full text match. Okay, well, fine. The locator text equals hello. Oh, wait a second. I want to have a case insensitive match. All right, this locator here will find hello with a capital or lowercase h, or all caps hello, or whatever combinations of those. You can do a string text, strict and exact text matches. You can really augment how you can find your elements, including using regular expressions. So you can just find any word that starts with HEL and a period to match any character and a star to match that any character as many times as possible. It goes on and it has enhanced CSS and text. Remember, CSS doesn't support binding text. However, in Playwright, yeah, they figured out a way to do it. So there's my CSS looking for a div to some element that has text, has hello in the text. In this case, we can also look for my class that has text, hello. This makes it much more descriptive if you want to go into CSS and do it. There's also text searches and multiple conditions that we can put in there in order to really customize our automation framework. This really gives us a really big way of trying to find elements if they do not exist. Guess what? It keeps going on. There's also visibility checks, and just only thing I wanted to point out here. There's only 4 visibilities. You can see if it's visible, if it's hidden, if the element is attached to something else, or if it is in the viewport or not in the viewport, and then you could scroll it in. If we are doing these checks, these are hard assertions, but if you put soft in front of it, they all become soft assertions, meaning you can fail 2 or 3 or 4 times and still have the test continue to run. And you can also check to see, in a slightly different way, you can see if a locator is visible or hidden or editable or enabled. The only thing about this side here is that there's no auto wait when you're doing this. Is an instant check, which can be a good thing, especially if you already spent 30 seconds waiting for a stale element to appear on your screen and it never appeared. The next thing that you're looking for to appear, you really don't want to be waiting 30 seconds for it to appear again. This is the best way you want to be able to do that. And of course, there's also visibility. You can wait for something to become visible or hidden. This is best when we're looking for spinners. As I mentioned on the previous slide, just to sum it up, there are 3 different ways that you can find elements. There's role-based, which I highly recommend, like looking through using the ARIA locator attribute. You can do it searching by text. Placeholder is good for finding inputs. And you can also find images or by title. Unless it's semantic, which is the CSX pass. Let's now become our worst case scenario. There are very common attributes that we have when we're finding elements. And this becomes important because if I'm going to say I want to find this add to cart button, what are the chances that I'm going to find other elements that might have add to cart in it, but they're not actually buttons or links? And there's going to be there could be 100 elements. How do I make sure that I get the right element? Well, here's the cool little trick behind that. If you happen to be looking for a link, more than likely href or target is going to be one of the attributes. Just look for elements with those in them. If you happen to be doing a click, if you're doing a select, well, type is going to be in your select field as an attribute. If we're looking for a field, placeholder is quite likely going to be the attribute that's used in there. And by the way, the star and the equals is saying, hey, find something that has not this exact wording, it contains, look for a placeholder that contains the word submit. And images like IMG and SVG, we're looking for those. Source and alt are the most common attributes. So you're not looking for every single one of them. You're just looking for strings that are in there. So so you could have, also you could have a data QA. Oh, there it is. I forgot to mention that. You might have a data QA element. Now I have it in brackets over here because it may not necessarily be named data QA. You will have to come up with an agreement, but it's a contract between the development and the QA. The contract very simply says, no matter what I do with these other labels, the developers will, might be changing the ID, the class, area label, but we promise, pinky swear, that we will never change the data QA, that whatever attribute we have there. Interesting enough, I just was on a project where the developers decided to change the data QA to do version control, and I had to say, please add an attribute called version, and you can say that's equal to v1, v2. Don't try and jam it into the data QA. You promised on your contract you would never change that. And of course, there's other modifiers. You can find other things. You can filter out elements, or you can find things that have and or. A little bit too advanced for this particular session, but to keep in mind, that's the reason, if you're ever wondering, why Playwright is eating Selenium's lunch. You also want to make sure you have the right tool for the right job. If I'm trying to hit this click me button, I can see that this is going to be a button, has a hashtag, which is a shortcut for finding the button, click button for the ID. And let me see if I can turn that off. We don't need that clicking over there. See if I can get that to stop doing that. When you're going to go and find a locator, you can right click on it, but whatever you do, don't copy the full XPath. This is usually going to be extremely brittle because it'll have indexes in it, and those will change from almost release to release, even run to run. You don't want something like that. You definitely want to have the copy of the XPath, which is saying, go find any element that has an ID that has click button inside of it. And as I said, the hashtag is a shortcut for the ID. And this is our locator over here. You can see this button for this click me. Click me is in the text over here. And we might be able to find, you could break this down and say, hey, I'm just looking for an ID that has click in it. That's the ways that we're going to be trying to find other stuff. You can do class switching. I used to really promote this because that was the trick that I did in the story at the beginning, where we had 100 different locators and they had all changed. It's the last. It's the last thing you want to do. Class switching means, hey, I want to go and find an element that is maybe it was a link over here, which is an anchor A, but now it's switched to a button. You can do that, but keep in mind that the text you'll probably have to pull out and look for in another attribute. Hopefully the text is in there, and like I said, Playwright has a really good background behind it to go and find text inside your locator. So there are ways. This is essentially what we're talking about when we're switching classes out there. Text locators in Playwright. I think I've kind of covered this already. I think this is kind of a duplicate, just mentioning that data QA elements will have more specific attributes, but you can change how you can find this. As the star over here, star x equals, means we're looking for something that contains the word hello. If we have a this is a straight up looking for welcome a text, but we can also add in these attributes like a caret symbol to say, hey, it should start with the word hello, or a dollar sign that says it should end with the word hello, and those are my only matches that I have out there. So keep in mind using this, and there's also a case sensitivity out there. You can put in an I to indicate that this should be case insensitive. Capital H, capital hello, lowercase hello. Just to let you know, there's an 80-20 Pareto principle in automation. About 80% of everything you do is done in just 6 actions. That's navigation, population, selection, interaction, synchronization, validation. All of it is just entering, selecting, click. Oh, I love the little robot over there. Doctor Who, I'm a big fan of the Daleks over there. So we're the interaction and the validation are going to be the two things we'll talk about, but this whole idea can be applied to all of these. Here's what they look like. If you want to navigate, you're going to go to somewhere, you're going to fill something, you're going to select an option, you're going to go click on something, you're going to look for a locator and wait for it to be visible, wait for order complete to appear on the screen. And lastly is validation. I saw order complete visible on our screen out there. And all these are, like I said, these are selectors, CSS, XPath, selectors that we can change and build dynamically if they happen to change their name. Developers. One of the other goals I want to do with this is to try and reduce scattered hard-coded weights. One version you might see in Playwright is a wait for load state, network idle. I don't really recommend, if you're using this, it's not very stable for two reasons. One, your Ajax updates on your screen might do 2 or 3 of them, and this thing might get fooled by one of them. Hey, the network's idle, but it's still updating, and it gets past this. Another time, I also watched this sit for 5 minutes waiting for the page to be ready. So if you do use this, definitely we'll put a timeout in there. And definitely we don't want to wait for timeout, hard-coded waits in there. That previous slide where I showed you how you can monkey patch, you could do this for as well and say, hey, what hard-coded timeouts do I have? Definitely want to get rid of the hard-coded timeouts and have some sort of dynamic wait on there. So we're going to talk about how a dynamic wait is going to get embedded into a click, and the click is going to be used to go and find a object without a page object model on the fly. This is my custom dynamic wait, kind of describing it what we have over here. It's a 3-step process. We're going to go loop around counting elements. Then we're going to look for some spinners to see if they are there, and if they do, we want to make them disappear. If we see a toast message, we want to get out immediately, because most likely the next thing we want to validate is, I clicked this button, did I see a message that popped up? Oh, by the way, the message is up there for only 5 seconds, and then if I'm sitting here waiting for the page to build and complete, the message will go away, the toast message will go away, and we will have missed it, and then we'll fail for no good reason. And the last bit is having 3 roll your own wait for load states. And as I said, there's a network stable, but it's the very last one I'm doing. And I'm also giving a timeout saying, hey, don't go past 30 seconds if you think the network is still going on. I use document loaded and load out there. And these are the different types of elements that we could be looking for, specifically when we're looking for like a spinner element out there. We definitely want to be looking for some of these out here. So we'll move forward onto that. So here's my roadmap. As I said, there are, first we'll do the static element count loop, where we'll look for the toast messages. We are going to count 3 times. We'll look for 3 static values of how many elements are in there. Also, at the very end, we're going to check and see if we actually have a blank page. So here's my static element count loop. This is a function called count objects. And it's going out and looking just for these, the anchor, the button, images, options, lists, filters, and input fields. And then we can go and just count them and then get the length, and that returns the count of the elements. One thing, don't try to be clever and write it like this. Just give me all the elements that are on the page that are visible. You could try this, but it will be freaking slow. It might take 3 seconds to give you the count, while this one might take you maybe 30 milliseconds to get the get the count of the elements. Trust me, that was the first thing I did. And by the way, AI wrote that for me first, so you got to keep an eyeball on the AI. It's usually 80% correct. The second thing I want to do is wait for any spinners. So here's a nice wait for spinner function that's going to be called inside of the dynamic wait. And it says, hey, don't wait any more than 30 seconds. Go see if you see a spinner. And if you do see a spinner, just sit there and wait for it to become hidden. And once it's hidden, come on back. We're all good. So now we're waiting for spinners to pop and go away on our screen. There might be other locators, other ways. Always check with your developers to see how they're actually writing the spinners. Spinner is 80-90% of the time you'll find an element that's up there. You also might have loading or a gas gauge out there. You want to maybe adjust for those. In that case, it's always different. Third, roll your own page weight. So here's my page weight. I'm doing a load state. I want to make sure the load is done, the DOM content is loaded. And this is just belt and suspenders at the very end of our dynamic wait. Wait for all this to be done, and then, of course, a timeout for 30 seconds on the network idle. This should give us a function that will go and find, tell you very clearly when your page is done, so you don't have to be putting in hard-coded weights and other weights through your framework. Last thing is, hey, I counted all these things, but did we have a blank page? Was the site not being able to reach? If the number of elements on the page is less than 20, it's probably something went horribly wrong. But we don't have to fail at that point. We could give it one more shot. We could say, hey, can you please refresh the browser and go through this whole loop one more time, just to make sure that this wasn't some sort of issue with the a random problem that's kind of popped up. I also want to make sure everybody knows, don't be generic when you are doing something. Like, here's a page click. Here's my click advanced function that's going to replace my click. And it's saying, hey, is the button that I had there, was it visible? Is it enabled? Let's go click it. And if any of this fails, it will come back and say, I expected this to be false to be true. The button was not enabled, or the button did not exist. Hate these. Which button was it? Was it the add to cart button? Was it the overnight delivery button, the second day air button? Always put a string in there that reports out that says, hey, this is the name of the button, and this is what I passed in, the string button. This is the button that I couldn't find. It wasn't enabled, or it did not exist. So best practice, always put some variable into any one of your specs or console logging when something goes sideways. So we're up to our Palmless design at this point. We're going to create a wrapper for our click. So as I said, we're calling it Click Advanced. And you'll notice that when I designed this, three things go on. First of all, we're passing it a locator, which is that's going to be coming from your page object model. That's okay. We'll deal with that in a moment. And when I do this Click Advanced, I do that dynamic weight I just showed you because, hey, the page might be building from the previous click. Then we go and hit our target element. Then we're going to go and click on it. And then we do the dynamic weight again. And in this case, we'll be looking for a pop-up, a toast message. And if it does, we get out because the next thing we might be doing is checking on that. So here's an example of our constructor over here. We create a deal link, which is deal of the day from a big box web page, and we're just going to go and wait and click on this deal link, and that's going to essentially fail if that does not work out correctly. So here is my Click Advanced version. You'll notice I do have that target in there, and I'm passing a page in there as well. The target is now changed. It says, hey, I might have a locator, or I might have a string. And that string is going to be something like, I want to click Add to Cart without having to go through the framework. Page object model. Let's make that dynamic and try and find it. This point, we would go and say, what type of target is it? If it's not a string, just go click the locator. But if the target is a string, we need to put in strategies to go and find a matching visible link or button because we don't have any locator descriptions in there. We just add the text, add to cart. And then we'll put those into this section over here. And then if we do get a match that says, hey, we found what we're looking for, the element, we're going to go and click on that particular element. And this is an example over here. I took, since the target is a string, might be add to cart, it says, hey, go find some button that's has add to cart in it, and go click on it. Well, we probably could go a little bit further and wrap that with try catches in order to catch anything that might go funky. We do know that the element exists, but 1% of the time you may not be able to click on it, may not be enabled, might be off screen. There's 2 or 3 different things that could go on with click. So you always want to do a try catch in here. Now, the next thing is we are going to take a look at another issue. What's the next thing that we do if we click on something? We're going to try and click on that round trip only. So here we are. I'm going to click on get by text round trip only. You'll find this element over here to click on that checkbox. And what's the next thing we're doing? We're going to expect that the checkbox was clicked. Well, interesting enough, we're sending the exact same element to the click and to the expect. Now the click, we can have it find the element if it doesn't exist, but the get by text is going to have the exact same thing. So this is what I'm doing with a custom expect advance. The expect advance is going to go and see if this is checked, and then return this value. So that's my basic locator over there. I've just done an expect wrapper, and this will do exactly what this is supposed to do. You can ask the AI, please go write this. Go. You can go and do this as a monkey test. Let's see. So the point I'm trying to make is I just clicked on something, but the object was stale, and I went and found it. I can go find it by looking through the class, the attributes, or the text. And then, of course, inside the page object class, the locators have this. We could go and find a replacement for the element that we're looking for. And of course, our functions are calling these. Hopefully, all our functions are going to use click advance for this to find a alternate version. But the next thing it does is says, hey, validate this element. Like I said, the same object's being passed to if we are clicking, let's say, a checkbox to see if it's checked. Both of them are being, well, this is solved over here because it's finding an element, but the expect advance, it's going to get the old stale element and fail and say, I can't find the element we're looking for. So this is the next level that I do over here is I create a locator dictionary. If I am replacing a locator with something that if we find a stale locator, we'll put the stale locator as the key into a dictionary and the valid locator in as the correct one to use, that if we found it over there. And since this is a public dictionary, we can go to the expect advance and say, hey, can you go and check that dictionary, see if the thing that you just passed me has already been resolved? Let's go click on the one that's correct, not the one that's stale. So this is essentially what it would turn out to be. I have my locator dictionary with the 2 locators and the being set and put in there. We're registering our locator if we find it. And one moment, please. I'll be back in 5 seconds. Apologies, my puppies are causing a distraction, so we can get rid of them. So there's my locator dictionary, and if we are able to resolve this element by getting a new one, well, then we'll just throw that into the locator. In the expect, the locator was created and found and fixed by click. Expect won't do that. We expect to see something, but if the locator comes in, we'll go and look and see if the locator has already been solved in the locator dictionary. And if that's true, then we'll go and replace the locator, the resolved locator from in here. So we basically just change this to find the correct element, and then we can check it because it's already been replaced. I don't do any fancy stuff inside of here for trying to find an element. If it's not there, it's not there. So that's that. So there's our mind map. That's what it kind of looked like when we started out. So we're kind of building all of this together. Let's see, I'm trying to click on deal of the day. Here's our locator, what it looks like. I got deal of the day over here. There's a couple different ways that we could go find an element if it doesn't exist. We could go and grab the text from the descriptor, the locator. Remember, you can't pull it from the DOM because the element doesn't exist in the way it's supposed to. But you can go grab the locator and say, extract this string out, deal of the day, lowercase all the letters, put a dash between each one of them, and go and see if you can find an href that has deal-of-day, and find that. And if it's a link, that's great. We'll go and click on that. That's basically how it would switch up and find other attributes by looking in the text and then converting it to the href over there. So a couple of things you can do. You can check and see, first of all, did they change the case sensitivity? Were the O and the T capitalized last release and now they're lowercase? Fine, let's go and put in the I over here for so that it's a not case sensitive. And I can inject that in there. I can do an attribute switch, as I said, grabbing from the text and looking for it in the href. And again, I'm using a star over here to say, hey, I'm looking for something that contains deal of the day. On this locator, we can do a class switch instead of an attribute. We can go find this as a button. The last thing, a little bit fancier, is it might be in a different iframe. So use the original locator and your other attributes and ones that you built, and go search through other iframes and see if you can find the elements that way. This whole thing will make your click a whole lot more robust. So now that we've got the stuff to switch all this up here, and we can, of course, last thing is save it into the dictionary, and then do our dynamic weight again because we just clicked it. The next thing is, why do I have the dynamic weight here and a dynamic weight here? Well, the reason being is that you want to catch toast messages that are popping up. I might want to click on overnight, but I also expect in this case, overnight unavailable is a toast message that appears. But if I'm waiting for the page to become stable, this may look like the page is still building. I want to be able to catch those toast messages and be able to get out of this. So here's my click advanced. There is my toast message that popped up saying, hey, 2 things were added to the cart. I expect that. And of course, that's my alarm saying we're getting to the end of the session here. We do have just a few more minutes. And we're just about wrapped up here. So what I want to do is do the dynamic weight, click that add to cart, and we detect that there was a toast message. We get out immediately. We do the expect that 2 added to the cart appeared on the screen. And then we might want to click on empty cart. And now you might get another message that says, hey, empty cart was appeared on this. And we might expect that empty cart appears on the screen. So that's all kind of brought everything into one location. So let's get it out to our last thing, which is the whole point of this whole thing. Now we figured out how to do all those clever things. You might want to do palmless click advance. So why to click on a clone or save button like this? There's a clone button in our ID, or the save button in the ID of the text. Why do that when you could maybe just say click advanced clone, click advanced save? Well, because we've already got that ability, we just kind of described it in the function above. We can go say, hey, if this is just a string and not a locator, go and search for all the elements with the text and the attributes and see if you can find it that way. That way you don't need a page object model anymore. Also, I like putting in highlights, not the UFT 3-second highlight, which they still do and have broken, by the way, and haven't fixed yet. I I do just a quarter-second highlight. Visually, I can see it if there's a recording or a screen capture, and I know that, hey, we went and found this dynamically rather than the actual locator that either came from the POM. It had to be replaced. Cool thing about it, if you do a highlight, is it's another way of determining if the element is not visible. You can say, go find me elements that are visible, but if you get a list back of elements, and this one looks good, if you do a highlight and it fails, it either means the element that you just had just disappeared, might have been a toast message, or the element that Playwright thinks is visible isn't. It's just another belt and suspenders thing that I like to put in there. And if the highlight isn't able to highlight it, I throw that away and keep looking for other elements that might match what I'm looking for. I also try and execute only if I get narrowed down to one element match. This solves for 90% of your maintenance, but there's always 10% left. Stuff that it says, hey, there were more than one things out here, and I'd rather have a human in the loop looking for something that is not there. You can, again, as I mentioned earlier, you can limit the elements that you're looking for. If you're doing a click, look for an anchor or a button. If you're looking for a fill, look for an input or a text area. If you're doing a select, look for a select or a combo box. And if it's expect, 90% of the time, it's just visible text. It's a div that's sitting on the page. This is a description of a strategy that my AI came up with on how to go find stuff and what order it does it at. First, it looks for an exact match inside the name. Then it looks for a partial match in there. Exact true means it's exact. I'm not crazy about that exact true. As I said earlier, I think you need to eliminate it because I don't believe it waits long enough on that. So little heads up on that. This is a partial match, so looking for the word clone anywhere in the text. Looking for, instead of a button, looking for a link, that's class switching. Looking in the area label, it will go and find that. That's a very common attribute. Looking for, this is an exact match. Oh, this goes from a button back to a link. See if there's a link out there with that in it. And then there's also the data test ID. This is the contract looking for a locator. That should always be matching. In fact, this is usually the first thing that we go looking for to see if you can find the element that's out there. All right, so that's everything that you do that you can pass if you're going to go out there and build your elements. That brings us to kind of the end over here. And if there's any questions on what I had, please let me know.
I am looking here. I don't see any question. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience with us today. Thanks to everyone who's been with us today. Don't forget Paul's next webinar on April 3rd is going to be on advanced playwright framework design, dynamic page weights, and pop-up message validation. Hope to see you joining this webinar on April 3rd at the same time, 12 to 1 Central Time. Again, thanks to everyone. Thank you, Paul, so much. We're always grateful to have you in our webinars. Again, Magdi Hanna, International Institute for Software Testing.